What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Take Talk Sports Podcast, here with another video. And as you can see from beside me, I am going to be giving my Euro 2020 knockout stage predictions and a bit of analysis beforehand. So before I get started in this video, I just want to say that I'm going to be mainly emphasizing and or analyzing the first round matchups and my predictions there, because if I do get some of those wrongs and I do go super into the farther matchups going up to the final and they're just incorrect, it's a bit pointless. So the main emphasis of this video is my predictions in these first rounds, but I will give my predictions all the way through. So before I get started with the predictions, just a little preview of kind of what this first round and how it shaped out. There's really just a bunch of major matchups early. And so one side of the bracket is also a bit stronger than the other. If you couldn't tell, it's this side over here, just over here, this side. And mainly because it's got Belgium, Portugal, France, and Spain, and Italy, not to mention. Those are basically some of the strongest teams, not counting the three or four on the other side. So just, I mean, what I want you to get from me saying that is watch early. If you're used to other tournaments, or maybe thinking this is kind of somewhat like the World Cup, where the early matchups are going to be a bit, you don't really need to watch them. They're going to be some blowouts, not really interesting matchups. That is not the case here. You're definitely going to want to watch from day one of this tournament, which is Saturday. And so definitely check out these matchups early. Another way that to show you how this is just such an amazing first round, and emphasize again that you should watch early, is Belgium, Portugal. If you would have told someone that that was the final, they would have believed you. You know, that Belgium Portugal matchup is a final caliber matchup, and it's coming in the first round. So that's just a big matchup. Just another reason to watch this. On top of the big players being a major part of this bracket being so good, there's a lot of dark horses on this bracket that people may or may not be talking about. Teams like Denmark playing Wales early. You've got the Czech Republic playing the Netherlands. They could make some noise, as well as they haven't really been dark horses in the group stage, but beforehand they certainly were, and that is Italy. They've certainly become one of the stronger favorites now. I don't know about favorites to win, because people are still a tiny bit skeptical, but I believe they won all of their matches 3-0. So they're a dark horse to make it farther than people ever expected them to. And then one last point before I get into my predictions is who's the favorite overall. I believe the Euro rankings has Belgium as number one, but to me, if France has to be the favorite, and if they don't win it all, it's a disappointment. Anything short of winning it all, it's a disappointment. And I feel like it's the same. You could say that for all countries, But if say Portugal don't win, or Belgium don't win, you can say, oh, they've got a weak back line, or they're just a bit old. For France, there is no excuse. They should win this thing all the way, and if they don't, it's a disappointment. So getting into my predictions, I'm going to start off with Belgium and Portugal. That is a huge matchup. Again, like I already said, it could be the final. For me, both teams, Belgium, I think specifically looked a lot better than Portugal in the group stage. Portugal, a bit sporadic with their performances, obviously losing to Germany in an interesting game, and then drawing with France. They didn't have the greatest group stage. I think they were somewhat trying to figure out their team, which obviously is what the group stage is for. And now I feel like they've found it. However, Belgium is so consistent, and they know who they are. And to me, they're like the Manchester City of this tournament. They're so consistent. They're almost like a robot in how they're going to deal with these teams. They've got Lukaku, who, if you don't know, is their striker, and at this point, arguably the best in the world, probably just behind Robert Lewandowski of Poland, who's not in this tournament. But they've got one of the best strikers in the world on top of De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne, just returning to their midfield, are probably the best midfielder in the world. Their back line is probably their biggest weakness, and it's the most questionable. And that's where Portugal could find success in this matchup. However, I think Portugal is too sporadic and Belgium is too consistent. And for that reason, I think Belgium is going to take this matchup. I think it could be a close one, even going to extra time, but I do think at the end of the day, Belgium takes it. Next matchup is Italy versus Austria. I'm not going to spend too much time on this matchup. Italy was so good in their group stages. I think they're going to carry that on to Austria. Austria is somewhat underwhelming in the group stages. I think they probably win by 2 or 3 goals to nil. So that in this matchup, I got to take Italy. The next group matchup is France versus Switzerland. Now, I don't think this will be a rollover. I think Switzerland are better than a lot of people think. I think it will be probably tough. My guess is for the entire first half. And then in the second half, I think France will settle down and then score quite a few goals and end up winning this matchup. Switzerland, it's great for them and they're a good team, but France is just too strong to drop this game. Next matchup is Croatia versus Spain. Spain and Croatia, both teams with a very up and down group stage. Spain obviously finishing with a 5-0 victory, but then before that, a few odd games where they didn't quite score, but they dominated possession and ended up with draws. It was just a bit weird group stage for them. Croatia, the same, started very weak against England and slowly ramped up, obviously winning their last game to get to the knockout stages. And I think I'm going to go with the upset here. I think Spain, these two teams really complement each other as far as a matchup goes. They're both slower, so they can deal with one another. They're both kind of possession dominant. I think Spain will end up dominating the possession, but both of them aren't really flying up and down the wings, and which is good for this matchup because I think both teams are susceptible to teams who do that. So for them to be matched up together is a really good matchup. And I think Croatia just has more momentum. That's weird to say because Spain just finished on a 5-0 win, but they played Czechoslovakia, who were abysmal in their last game, whereas Croatia really fought and had a huge win, specifically Luka Modric, their best player in midfield, had a huge win. And it's an upset, and I recognize that, and it could easily go the other way, but I think in this matchup, I'm going to take Croatia. Which leads me to the next side, which is Sweden versus Ukraine. This is kind of defense versus attack, Sweden being defense, Ukraine being attack. And I've just been so impressed with Sweden in the group stages. They were supposed to finish bottom of their group and be knocked out, and instead they almost finished first. Obviously, they didn't because of other matchups that went on. Actually, no, I believe they did finish first in their group. Correction. It's first or second, but either way, wherever they finished, they were supposed to be knocked out, and to even be in contention for first in their group is something so impressive. And I think Ukraine is good on attack, but I really don't think they quite have the consistent quality and the sturdy back line that Sweden does. And so I think Sweden probably grabs them by a goal, or probably by a goal in this matchup. So I'm going to take Sweden. Next matchup is the big one, England versus Germany in the first round. What a matchup of the Titans. If you don't know, this is the matchup in 1966 when England first won their first and only World Cup, was against Germany. And so who knows if that'll play any factor into this, but just something a little interesting for you to know. I think this is a really interesting matchup. Germany, obviously really up and down. They managed to pull it out in their last game against Hungary to stay in the tournament. Unbelievable that they almost weren't. Very inconsistent, didn't look great in their first game, then looked really good against Portugal, and then, a bit up and down in their last game. England started well against Croatia, had a very odd game against Scotland, and then they won, but another odd game versus the Czech Republic. It was a bit of a game where they were both kind of waiting each other out, knowing they would both make the tournament. England is so dynamic and so youthful, and as long as Gareth Southgate, their manager, plays their best 11 and does play their creative players, I think they get past Germany. I think Germany lacks a bit of that final touch in the other opponent's penalty box. I think it's going to be a good game. I think there will be quite a few goals scored, but at the end of the day, I got to go with England in this matchup. Next matchup is Netherlands versus Czech Republic. This is a matchup where Czech Republic could easily surprise the Netherlands and come through. However, I think the Netherlands are playing with this want to and this determination to make some noise in this tournament after not making it to the World Cup. We've seen it in the group stages. Their players are playing amazing. Wijnaldum, De Jong, Depay, all of their players are playing amazing. And I just think they're too strong, too much quality on the pitch to not get past Czech Republic. So I'm going to go with the Netherlands. And the final matchup in the first round is Wales versus Denmark. This is a really good matchup. Two teams that could be considered dark horses getting matched up in the first round. And as well as Wales have played in this group stages, specifically Gareth Bale and Højbjerg and the rest of their players, I'm going to go with Denmark. I think Denmark are just playing with something to fight for, and they're playing with 12 men. And what I mean by that is Christian Eriksen going down so early in the tournament and in such a crazy fashion. I think it's given them that extra little bit of motivation and magic that we saw in the last in the last match day of the group stage that got them into this tournament. And I think it's just, like I said, they're playing with 12 men, and as good as Wales are, and as much as Wales could just win this game because they are so dynamic, I think Denmark just has something extra that they're playing with. So in this matchup, I'm going to go with Denmark. So that's it for my first round. Those are the main predictions I want you to think about and see what I said, and check them out for yourself and see what you guys think will happen. Like I said, I'm going to continue to do my rest of my predictions in this video, but take them with a grain of salt, because if I do get certain matchups wrong, the matchups could be completely wrong in these quarterfinals and finals rounds. And I will be coming back, obviously, to make my future predictions when the next rounds are set and see how I did. But for the case of this video for the case of completion, I will continue to do my predictions. So over here in this area, I had Belgium winning and Italy winning. So that matchup would be Belgium versus Italy. Another fantastic matchup that could be a final matchup, but it's not. I think Italy obviously looked great offensively, and really, I think they probably will and should score a lot of goals against Belgium. However, I think Belgium are so much more clinical on attack and so much more controlling as far as possession goes. So I think Belgium do end up taking this matchup, but it's definitely a matchup to watch if it does end up being that matchup. The next matchup down here, I had France winning and I had Croatia winning. So that matchup would be France versus Croatia. Obviously, like I talked about when I was talking about that Croatia versus Spain matchup, both teams complemented each other because they're not great at countering speed, and France is almost purely speed. So, it's cool to see Croatia get as far as they might in the tournament. However, France, as I said in the very beginning of this video, is just too good on paper, and they're just too fast for this older Croatia team. So France takes that matchup. Next, Sweden versus England are the teams I had winning in their matchups. This will be a fun game, I think. I think Sweden poses enough of a defense to stall England for quite a while. I think it could come down to late in the second half for a winner to be made. However, I think England just has much more quality all around the pitch than Sweden does. And for that reason, England would take that matchup. The next matchup, I have Netherlands versus, you can't see it, but Denmark are the two teams I had winning their matchups. That's a fun game because both teams, like I said, have a bit of an extra motivation. Netherlands, they didn't make the World Cup and they want to make some noise. Denmark, obviously, the drama with Christian Eriksen. However, even though Denmark do have that 1-2 and they do have that 12th man, obviously, just in case you are confused, I don't actually think they have a 12th man. By the 12th man, I think it's Christian Eriksen's presence is what I'm talking about. But despite them having that 12th man, the Netherlands have just more quality and more world-class players. Like I said in the first time, De Jong, Wijnaldum, Depay, Dumfries, all players all around the pitch. I think they just outclass them a bit, especially on paper. So in that matchup, I'm going to take the Netherlands. And so now getting into what would be, I believe, the semifinals, I had Belgium beating Italy to make it in the semis and France beating Croatia to make it in the semis. So the matchup would be Belgium versus France, and what a matchup that is. Again, another matchup that could be the final that we're getting before the final. France, so dynamic, so deadly attacking while having a stable back line. And Belgium are as well dynamic and so consistent, as I've said the whole time, attacking. However, I think their back line is a bit too weak to stand up to this French attack. And it'll be a close game, probably the whole game, but I can see France ending up pulling it out by a goal or two in the end, just because their attack is so deadly and that Belgian back line is a bit weak. So in this matchup, I would take France. Next, I had England winning out this bracket and the Netherlands winning out this bracket, leaving England versus Netherlands in the semis. That's a really fun matchup. Netherlands, again, like I've said the whole time, have something extra to play for. And England, obviously, trying to win the Euros for the first time in a long time. And so, it's really going to be a fun game. Lots of youth, lots of dynamic attack. However, I do think England have a strong enough back line and more deadly attackers on offense, even coming off the bench. I think this would be another game to watch, another awesome game to watch. However, I think England are a bit more dynamic and would be able to make more noise against that Netherlands back line. So I would have England winning that matchup. And that leaves me with a final of France winning out this side, England winning out this side, and meeting in the final England versus France. Now, if this was purely me, hoping and wishing and being obviously biased, I would say England. And that's not to say that England don't actually have a really good chance to win this final. I think they do. I think especially because if they get their rhythm and find their rhythm in that first round and throughout the rounds, they probably are unbeatable, if I'm honest. But, if I'm looking at it from a totally unbiased and especially on paper look, I think France just slightly outclass England. I think France has the perfect balance as far as the team goes. Because you look at some teams, like you look at England, the team they're matched up against, they are great and so much world-class talent, but they're young and a bit inexperienced as far as international tournaments go. You look at teams like Portugal, you say they're good, but they're a bit sporadic on defense. You look at Belgium, you say they've got a weak back line. You look at Germany, you say they're not quite clinical enough on offense. You look at France, and I'm not sure they have a weakness. Their attack is so strong and yet experienced. They've got players like Karim Benzema, who's an experienced number 9, but at the same time, they've got youth and extreme talent in youth with Kylian Mbappe. They've got the best defensive midfielder in the world in N'Golo Kante, as well as Paul Pogba. Some of the best defenders in the world with Rafa Varane. They're just so good everywhere that it's hard for them. Like I said in the beginning, anything short of winning would be a failure. And as much as I want to say England beat them in the final, if I'm looking for it and giving you as pure of a prediction as I can, in the finals matchup, as good as I think the game will be, I think France do end up winning it, probably in extra time. So that's my predictions with the champion being France. That's my entire predictions. Obviously, again, after the first round, take my prediction with a grain of salt, and I'll be coming back to see how I did after each round. But that's my predictions. And again, if you guys are still on the fence, even after watching this video, about whether you should watch this or not, or think you want to check it out or not, I couldn't recommend it enough, especially if you're on the fence about football as a whole. This is the time to get into it. I've said it over and over again leading up to these Euros, but it's like an all-star game every game, especially with this matchup. I can't emphasize it enough. If you're going to watch any matchup this entire Euros, watch this game. This has some of the best players in the world all over the pitch. Even the England-Germany game, watch that game too, because it's an all-star game every game. It's the best players in the world all on the same pitch. You're going to see so much skill and so much quality. Even if you don't know football, you're going to be able to recognize how great these players are because they're all playing together and they're all on the same team. This is your chance to get into it. This is your chance to see how great this sport is. And I couldn't recommend you checking this out enough. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Obviously, I'll be coming back and looking at the rounds. And of course, NBA playoffs are heating up. So much stuff to talk about. The scenes might look a little bit different in the coming weeks because I will be in a different location, but I will still continue to make videos for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any ideas that you want me to do a video on, please let me know in the comments. I would love to read them. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.